Well, here we are in the perfectly pleasant city of Kenosha, Wisconsin, walking through the ruins that remain after national obsession. In the summer of 2020, on this block of cracked concrete, a cell phone captures what we've been told is a common occurrence in this country. A black man getting gunned down by a white police officer. The clip instantly goes viral, sparking days of mass protests and nights of violent riots. 3 days after the shooting, a baby-faced teenager comes to Kenosha with an AR-15. His night ends in fatal chaos and the birth of a new viral obsession, a murder trial that's must-watch TV. These twin tragedies were instantly beamed into every cranny of our lives, and yet no one knows what really happened.
Oh! What is wrong with you? Sorry, I thought I canceled this subscription and I still have it. I really need to figure out how to handle my finances better. Yeah, no, I used to have the same problem. I just use hiatus. Hiatus? It's super easy. I'll explain it to you. Just no more of those weird growly sounds, please. Download the app. You'll be able to see all your subscriptions and cancel the ones that you don't need or want. See which of your monthly bills are negotiable, and Hiatus will negotiate for you. And you'll be able to set up a custom budget. So good.
That's a good trailer. Good. I mean, that's a good trailer. I mean,
it's a good trailer. He did a good job. Yeah.
Of course, of that introduction, I'm like, this is a mixed blessing. How in God's name am I going to live up to the hype right now? It's impossible. That can't be done.
You can do it. You can do it.
Like Scorsese of conservative mini docs. I'm like, no, bro, I don't. So
yeah. No, I would call this. I mean, to me, this is a apolitical documentary. It's not political. This is societal, really. Let me give you a proper introduction here. Rob Montz, you're the CEO and co-founder of Good Kid Productions, correct?
Correct.
Documentary maker. I love your bio, by the way. You said a degree in psychology. No, was that what it was? But
philosophy. Yeah, please get it right. Philosophy.
I'm so sorry. It's blonde. And I love that you said, what was it? Zero marketing skills or something? Marketable skills. Marketable skills. Yeah.
Absolutely no ability to produce value for other humans. Yeah.
Thank
you for reminding me what I was like at 22. I appreciate it.
No problem. It's what I'm here for.
Yeah, great. My little tadpole self. I have big dreams. Not a lot of hard skills, unfortunately, to accompany the big dreams. You got to have both in combination. And my 20s were basically an extraordinarily painful process of realizing ambition alone is not enough. You do actually have to have skills that generate value for your fellow humans. And I got it eventually. I mean, I'm approaching 40. It took a while. I was a slow learner. But I did.
I didn't grow up until I was 42. So, that was when I started adulting. Yeah, that was a while ago, but yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. I get that on such a core level for sure. And so last night or yesterday afternoon, Juan ambushed me. He said, "Hey, what are you doing tomorrow?" And I said, actually, it's a pretty quiet day. And he says, "Okay, good. You're going to co-host a 2-hour show with me. By the way, it's live." And I said, "Okay." And he said, next, "I'm sending you this information on a guest we're having on and documentary that they put together, and watch it and, be prepared, be ready." So I said, "Oh God. Okay. No, I can do this. And I opened up the documentary and I started watching it. And I think it's a total of 28 minutes? I think it was like 28 minutes. 28 of the best minutes I've spent in a little while, because it was so good. It was so unexpected, the angle. Now, I'm a law enforcement spouse. And I paid a lot of attention to that case and all of the other ones too, so that I could have intelligent conversations with people who wanted to come at me with unintelligent conversations. And so as soon as you shut in, I don't want to give too much away. I want to leave that to you as to what you share. But the 7 tenets of what really happened, I was literally fist pumping, like, yes, you tell them, like aggressively pleased. And then you went further. So I kind of want to give this over to you a little bit. Tell me about the making of this documentary.
Well, I just want to make sure people know that. So Good Kid Productions, we're a kind of a documentary production house. Kind of the whole thesis of the company is that we kind of have Netflix quality production in terms of just cameras and audio mixing and color correction. But we couple it by telling stories that establishment Hollywood institutions would never tell, or tackling topics that they would never topic, or exploding certain political pretenses that saturate Los Angeles and New York City. And so we have our own channel that we're kind of growing now, and people can watch the documentary we're going to talk about right now on that channel for free, just Broken Boys of Kenosha on the Good Kid Productions YouTube channel. There are a couple restrictions on it. You have to sign in. We can get into that if you want to. There's been some kind of gangster covert censorship of the message of the documentary. I'm not like an Alex Jones type normally. I'm not InfoWars, but things that have occurred to us the last couple of weeks have made me slightly more sympathetic to I don't know, the one world elite alliance that is turning the fish gay, or whatever it is that Alex Jones's latest monologue is.
Yeah.
So it's about so the documentary centers on Kenosha, Wisconsin, who your audience is probably maybe vaguely familiar with. In the summer of 2020, it's a small kind of bedroom community in Wisconsin. Kenosha had this rare distinction of birthing 2 different mega viral news incidences in a span of just 72 hours. So very rare.
Yeah.
And the first one was about a week after George Floyd had been killed. A black man by the name of Jacob Blake is shot getting into his car on the north side of Kenosha. It's captured on a cell phone, like a 6 or 7 second clip, uploaded probably to Facebook, I think. Instantly goes mega viral.
Yep.
In part because the primary corporate storytellers, the establishment media operations of this country, had convinced themselves and then attempted to convince the American public that what was captured on that cell phone was George Floyd 2.0. It was another instance of vicious institutional racism against an unarmed, innocent black man. That's the story that we were told.
Right.
We'll get into whether or not that actually matches reality in a second. But just, again, they pump that message that this was grotesque institutional racist injustice into the American people. That inspires somewhere between 5,000 to 6,000 outside protesters to descend on Kenosha. The political leadership of Wisconsin catastrophically fails to properly equip the city to protect itself against these freedom fighters / violent rioters. And then Kenosha is subjected to 3 straight nights of violent rioting, which primarily ends up victimizing the historic Black business district of Kenosha, which is, again, another odd achievement for Black Lives Matter and our anti-racist activists. On the 3rd night of riots, Kyle Rittenhouse, again, another name I'd imagine your audience is familiar with, drives to Kenosha, picks up his AR-15 in a medic bag on the way down there in order to answer the call to come protect a used car dealership. And that night is the night where he ends up shooting 3 people and killing 2 of them, which prompts another enormous mega viral news story and his murder trial, in which he's eventually acquitted. That's like, wall-to-wall cable news coverage.
Right.
And our whole thesis of the documentary, the first half of it, is lovingly decimating the propagandistic narrative that emerged around Jacob Blake, primarily with the aid of an interview with Bill Barr, former Attorney General.
Great interview.
But then on the second half, we actually found a trauma that is shared by Jacob Blake, Kyle Rittenhouse, and 2 other main characters of that tragedy. Kind of a generational epic challenge for this country that got entirely missed by the media's rush to try to push what happened into Kenosha into these neat political packaging. So that's what people can expect.
Yeah. Was that discovery accidental? So was that the angle of the documentary initially, or did that become a focus of that when you realized that?
Yeah, I have a buddy of mine, Eli Steele, who did a documentary a couple years ago with his dad, Shelby Steele, who's this like incredible kind of dissident Black conservative intellectual. deconstructing the Michael Brown case, the Ferguson, Missouri, which is kind of the, ground zero for the modern Black Lives Matter movement. And it just kind of, it does what we do with Jacob Blake, which is just show virtually everything that you were told about this incident was an active lie. It's actually what I've taken to call an anti-truth, because it's not just wrong. It literally, they're telling you something that is going to cause you to draw the exact wrong lessons from what actually happened in Michael Brown's case or for Jacob Blake's case. And we were going to do the same thing with Jacob Blake. But I think over the course of my investigation, I ended up noticing this tie that we'll get into eventually, right?
Yeah.
Which is not, but I think it's prime, but it's also, I mean, I don't know if this is interesting to people, but I'm deeply psychologically primed to pick up on what I picked up on, because I'm a father of 3, married, but am myself a product of divorce, product of a charismatic but occasionally psychologically abusive father who proceeded to drop dead when I was 19. Oof. And I'm approaching 40. I'm embracing and I'm loving and I'm recognizing my own traumas in order to process them to become a better man and make sure, most importantly, I don't pass them on to my own kids. And that's the psychological background to when I'm diving into this subject matter late last year, or I guess earlier this year, and noticing that every single major character in this story grew up without a dad. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And you dig into it further, though, and you realize that's extraordinarily, scandalously common in this country. 1 out of every 3 American boys is raised without a dad.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
1 out of every 3. That's crazy to me. I guess it shouldn't be, because that is the reality. That's common, as common as divorce. What's the, I don't even think the statistics are correct anymore, but, I remember growing up, or not growing up, but I remember for decades hearing that, 50 or 60% of marriages end in divorce and all that stuff, so the precursors are there already telling you, oh, you're going to fail. You're bound to fail. So, so just expect for your marriage to fail instead of, expect to work hard to make a marriage work and do the things you need to do. But the fatherlessness is staggering. And, the thing about that for me, so let me say this instead. I know there's going to be people, and they may even be in the comments already, I don't know, that will say, oh, just because there isn't a father in the home, you're saying that you're going to grow up to be a criminal, or you're going to grow up to make, terrible choices in life and all of that. And, it's not a blanket statement. Not every person who grows up without a good father figure is going to grow up to be garbage. There are people, I'll use my husband as an example. My husband grew up without his biological father in the picture. He grew up with a very strong mother with strong values, just salt of the earth kind of woman, great work ethic, all of the things. And his lack of father figure actually made him become more determined to be better, to do better, to be better. And that's part of kind of what you said, that introspection, that self-assessment that just isn't common. It doesn't necessarily happen as much as it should. So you were actually extremely fortunate in that regard, that, you took circumstances. And of course, I'm not saying that you had a horrible childhood by any means. I wouldn't make those assumptions. But you had things that you knew were wrong and you are different or not right. And you said, well, I'm not going to do that in my life. I'm going to do things differently. And that's maybe part of what's lacking in a lot of that.
Right. And I'm not here to deny human agency. We're not, there's something, and I say this as someone who's secular, but becoming a little more squishy and new age as I age every day. Right. But there's something miraculous and transcendent about the human will. You can make choices somehow that are outside of, it's not everything's biologically determined. Not everything's preset at day one because of neurochemicals, right? You can make choices. But, when I was 22, I was kind of a naive, self-righteous libertarian where I thought there was a purity of the will, where everything is primarily a product. Everyone's a Ayn Rand superhero in the waiting if you just make the right choices, right? And anything that goes wrong in your life is primarily because of your own moral failings, or laziness, whatever it might be. Then you grow up, get your ass kicked a little bit, have some kids, have the kids kick your ass, have life kick your ass, and you notice the obvious thing, which is we're not purely the product of our own choices. Obviously, like I'm saying, obviously, right? And that you can be you're deeply shaped by the circumstances of your formative years, for better or for worse, right?
Yeah.
And the framework that you use to make choices can be morphed and broken and misshapen by the people that are charged with tending to you as you're emerging as a human, right? Into your skull, into the world.
Yeah, right.
And it's also, so nothing's destiny. Nothing is destiny.
Right.
I mean, the big documentary we did before this is about a professor at Harvard University who got canceled because he broke from certain woke progressive pieties. People can also watch that for free on the YouTube channel as well, on Good Kid Productions. This guy named Roland Fryer, who's a once-in-a-generation economic genius, was also raised without a dad, and through pure grit and intellectual virtuosity has pulled himself to the highest realms of American intellectual achievement, right? So nothing's destiny.
Right.
But the data does speak for itself. And what we do is we call it like the rough mathematics of human flourishing, which is if you pull a dad from the house for a boy, the chances that he drops out of high school, is long-term unemployed, and what's the third one? I think goes to jail. All three of those things, if the dad is pulled out of the house, the likelihood of all three of those things doubles. Okay? So it makes it radically, dramatically more likely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And I love the way you explain this in the documentary too. You do a great job of showing how this works and how that happens. And I see here someone has commented, but you're white, so you had better options to climb out of it. And that's of course the conception.
That's like,
right?
I guess he's miming kind of the retard progressive take on things. Part of the reason that we took it, but what we wanted to say was, of course, you read Shelby Steele or you read Glenn Lowry or John McWhorter, and they're excellent about discussing the epidemic of fatherlessness in Black America, which like that's raw dog truth right there. Like it's just true that I think it's 75%.
Yeah, the last I read was like 72%.
Right? But we purposely wanted to transcend the kind of predictable partisan narrative about this because the rates of fatherlessness in the white community, while not equivalent to the Black one, are rapidly catching up. And the Daniel Patrick Moynihan in the 1960s very famously had that huge report on the challenges of Black America. And one of the things that he diagnosed was the rate of fatherlessness. And today in 2023, white America has the same rate of fatherlessness that caused Daniel Patrick Moynihan heart palpitations in 1965. So it's as bad now as it was back then. And back then he was saying, this is a existential crisis, right? Existential crisis.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
And wanted to say that it's a thoroughly biracial phenomenon.
Right.
And I think the fatherlessness epidemic is an essential fueler of these, deaths of despair that we're seeing in the white community, where people grow up with deep wounds and traumas, and they think that they can anesthetize themselves, boys in particular, with opioids and porn and Call of Duty. And it turns that doesn't actually fix the underlying trauma. And the trauma is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Right. Yeah. The three main components of the documentary, which are, of course, are Jacob Blake, Kyle Rittenhouse, and why am I drawing a blank on his name? Rosen.
Well, there's two other people. There's Rosenbaum and then Anthony Huber, the two people that Kyle Rittenhouse.
Okay. Yeah. And, the parallels.
Don't give too much away. Don't give too much.
Yeah, I know. I'm like
my standard issue now for media appearances, we're allowed to talk about two of the four. But if people if they want to get the full expanse of, you got to give them a little taste. We got to give them a little taste, but not everything. Not everything.
Gotcha. So, so without saying much, I will say the parallels of that fatherlessness is jaw dropping, and I did not know about Kyle Rittenhouse's upbringing and the challenges that he faced, and once I saw that, it explained a lot. it explained a lot, because one of the big conversations a lot of people had about Kyle Rittenhouse and his decision to do what he did, to go out there as a young boy. How old was he again? 19? Was he 19?
No, he's 17.
Not even?
17 with the AR-15, wandering through a war zone. And but if you're a good conservative, the dogma you've been fed is that Kyle Rittenhouse is just an unimpeachable Second Amendment martyr. That's all you're allowed to believe. Anything
all you're allowed,
and you're Antifa, right?
Right.
It's like, oh, you must be Antifa. It's like, no,
you can't win. You literally can't win. Whatever your opinion.
The conservative radio host, I'm like, okay, if your 17-year-old said, I'm going to strap on an AR-15 and wander into a war zone, would you let him?
Right. Well, you know what? I love that you said that.
You wouldn't.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I have to be honest with you. I came from it from the perspective of a mom. I'm a mom. I have daughters. I don't have sons, but I'm a mom. And as a mom, there is no way in hell my child would be going out there into, what is essentially a war zone, and do that. He would not be allowed. I would tie him down to a chair. There's no way in hell I would allow that. So that is kind of, that was kind of a thing for me that, I get what he was trying to do, what he believed he was trying to do. But as a parent, as a responsible adult, I was sitting there thinking, where are the adults in his life? Like, why? Who let that happen? We have to take some responsibility for our kids at, 7 or 17. That's still our child, and you're responsible. And that was a question I had, that, where are the parents of this kid that they would allow that? And you're so right. People were like, no, he's a hero. He's, okay. I mean, he's got to live with that for the rest of his life now. This is a life-altering event.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened is, so there was this cascade of lies related to Jacob Blake. And I think understandably people of a more moderate or right-leaning disposition, once they at least sensed or could taste that they were being lied to, it fueled maybe an overreaction on the right for Kyle Rittenhouse, where it became, okay, well then we're going to say Rittenhouse is purely, he's the next great American hero.
Right.
Second Amendment martyr. He was a young, beautiful idealist, and that
baby face,
baby face idealist, and that there's no room for criticism of him. Right. And again, in our documentary, what we say is we don't say that Kyle Rittenhouse is a bad guy.
No.
My sense is that he was driven by a genuine idealism, and there had been a catastrophic collapse of law and order in Kenosha. There was no one there to protect private businesses. There was not. But at the same time, he's 17 years old, right? And a 17-year-old boy is going to be flooded with dreams of heroic achievement.
Yes.
He's going
to say a little bit of hero complex.
And it's up to fathers to properly mold and channel those kind of ancient male energies. Properly channeled, they lead to glory. Improperly channeled, they lead to broken bones and violent chaos. Okay. And what we saw happen in Kenosha was a lot of broken bones and violent chaos. And Kyle Rittenhouse was an essential contributor to that. He was. Yeah. And what I like to, for more conservative audiences to point out is that Ryan Balch, who was basically the kind of de facto leader of the private militia police force that had been set up around this used car pod, has himself, during Kyle's trial, said, the second that Kyle joined us, we thought that he was young, inexperienced, and naive, and we repeatedly had to scold him for unnecessarily instigating conflicts with some of these protesters and rioters. And Ryan Balch had committed himself early that evening to basically attaching himself to Kyle Rittenhouse's hip to keep him safe. And you can see from a lot of the trial footage, in almost all the footage of Kyle, Ryan Balch is right next to him the whole time, as a kind of protector father figure. And then that night, Kyle gets turned around and detached from Balch's protection. And it's within a matter of minutes that the shooting starts.
Yeah.
Exactly what Balch had predicted and worried about is what occurs.
Exactly what happened.
That Kyle no longer has a wiser kind of, substitute father figure to protect him.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. It's, and I think one of the really important things I want to say for anyone watching this or commenting here is that this is the way this documentary is done is you present facts. This isn't, you're not telling anybody how to think about the events or the people involved. You let people draw their own conclusions, and you basically say, like, here's the facts. Here's what actually happened in both situations. Here's what actually happened, A to Z. Here is the truth of it. You decide how you want to feel about that. And then there is this huge component of this fatherlessness and the ties of that. And for me, it was very hard to not sit back and say, how does that not have anything to do with this? And, maybe somebody else will watch it and go, nope, not buying it. That's not the case. I don't know how you can walk away thinking that, but you leave it so that people can make that decision for themselves. And I like that. I like that.
Yeah. I don't really care what people think. I know we're right. It's okay. It's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
That part of my 22-year-old self has not disappeared.
No, that's good.
But in terms of a exceptional level, maybe a blind level of self-confidence, which has probably been my greatest asset during those periods in which I was completely economically useless. That's not gone away. And I don't particularly care if people don't buy it. I know what's happened. And we went to Kenosha for a couple of days, and this is maybe 2 years after everything had gone down. And it's wild to see that it's still a raw wound for people, in part because they know how catastrophically the corporate media had failed to properly cover what happened there. I mean, it's still very raw. And one of the days we were there, we actually went and filmed at the historic Black Business District, again, where you can go there and there's large stretches of blocks that are craters where Black-owned businesses used to be. That's the legacy. That is the sustained long tail legacy of Black Lives Matter in Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right. That's just facts, right?
Yeah.
While we were there, a police officer pulled up, I think as he saw me, and I'm just like, I'm fucking, I'm a hipster and I got no socks on. And I'm like, what do you have this camera on? And we start chatting. And within a matter of a minute, I'm just telling him what we're doing and what my thesis is about what happened in Kenosha. And he instantly says to me, like, that's exactly right. This guy, who was a Black police officer, though, he, like, with very little prompting, talks about the fact that his dad and mom had home cooked meals for him every single night.
Wow.
He knows how deeply that shaped him.
Wow.
And on the flip side, now that he's become an officer in the Kenosha Police Department, he recounts to me how over the course of his job, the most heartbreaking thing is to be called someplace in Kenosha and to see parents or adults in some act of violent abuse and seeing their kid there and getting to watch the trauma in real time. And then 20 years later, getting called back to that same block, and that traumatized kid is now a traumatized adult, repeating the cycle of trauma for his or her own kids. Wow. Just getting to watch, like, nothing has changed. Nothing has improved. And this will repeat indefinitely without profound cultural restructuring.
Yeah, it's a dismal cycle. And I know, speaking for my husband and of course that officer, to witness that on such a repetitive level is so disheartening and frustrating, because it doesn't have to be that way. And it's very sad. It's a true, probably I would say the biggest takeaway from the documentary is, wow, what a tragedy. What a tragedy that is continuously played out in our society. And
it's hard, though, because there's no neat policy solutions for it, and there's no neat political talking points to be drawn from it.
Right.
Like, you can do things on the margins to make the modern American economy more accommodating to adult males, right? You can, males that maybe have 100 IQs that, 50 years ago, there would have been a unionized auto manufacturing job for them, which would have guaranteed steady employment, a sense of purpose, a sense of dignity, and enough money that they could tend to a family. And a lot of those jobs have disappeared, obviously. And there's things you can try to do on the margin to try to generate them.
Right.
But I think that, like, at best is maybe 20% of the solution is found in the realm of politics and hard public policy.
Yeah.
The other 80% is cultural and spiritual. And there's nothing to be done other than advance particular messages related to what it means to be a grown-ass man, right? I think this is probably what accounts for the astonishing popularity of a guy like Jordan Peterson, or even on a lesser level, Joe Rogan, right?
Sure. Yeah, both.
And then it's up to individual men, regardless of their base level of trauma or dysfunction, to make better choices.
Yeah, break that cycle. Break the cycle, man.
And making better choices is not the same thing as posting on social media that you're making better choices, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not. Can't be done in a meme.
Private, and it's not fun, and nobody's going to acknowledge or like it. I mean, trust me, this weekend was a lot, I feel, of me making good sacrificial choices without any social media feedback from my 3 kids on a rainy day on Sunday, attempting to navigate a game of Parcheesi that was very different than we'd initially envisioned. My youngest of 3 decided to start stealing everybody's pieces. Again, I tried to retain loving, zen, present, father, calm. Didn't always work out that way.
No. What are the ages of your kids?
My daughter's 7 and my sons are 5 and 3.
Yeah, you're in the thick of it. That's for sure.
We still got diapers up in my house. I know we're not out of it yet. I know that there's a sweet spot to come when we get out of the diapers, and I don't have to worry about my sons doing anything completely ridiculous physically with themselves. There's a sweet spot there, and then adolescents and teenagers will enter the house, and there's a whole new set of challenges there. We're almost there. We're almost in the sweet spot.
That's awesome. Yeah, you parents of boys. I'm a mother and grandmother of all girls.
Wow.
And I'm so baffled by boys. And exactly why you said they just throw themselves everywhere. They're just so physical in everything that they do. And I'm like that helicopter, not that bad, but I tease myself and say I'm like a helicopter mom and grandmother, and I have to like sew my mouth shut to make myself not say be careful every 2 seconds. And and speaking of Jordan B. Peterson, he had this thing that he put out about letting your children do dangerous things in a careful way or in an observed way or whatever. And I took that to heart. Like, I have to stop saying constantly, be careful, be careful, be careful, and just let them explore their world, as long as it's, not something they can get truly injured by or whatever. And that's hard. That's really hard.
I think it's the balance, right? It's the masculine and the feminine, sort of this ancient dialectic, these ancient rhythms that have kind of developed over the course of hundreds of thousands of Homo sapiens being on Earth. And the ideal is that balance. And there's actually no definitive right answer to it. It's some combination of dads at their best will encourage risk-taking and be okay with kids incurring certain levels of physical damage, not psychological damage, although it's okay for them to have psychological challenges. But that can degrade into neglect for dads. Right. And moms are good at the love and the warmth and the protection, but that can devolve into what's now known as like helicopter parenting, or the kind of neurotic micromanaging of parents, and which itself has its own psychological costs when you deny kids the opportunity to go and challenge themselves in the real world. And they need to have a little bit of resistance in order to build up the mind muscles that they're going to need in adulthood.
Yeah, it's so true.
And in no small part, a lot of the incredible psychological dysfunction of 20 somethings is because there's been an excess of that feminine energy in their childhood, where not enough risk taking, and they spent large portions of their youth on screens or in tightly controlled soft air, and they're also in turn saturated in a kind of woke politics that's all purely about affirmation. And it's not about encouraging risk-taking and encouraging self-development and self-betterment. It's just a message of you're beautiful the way that you are. Particularly like an unorthodox, heterodox identity. Yeah. Like that identity, that thing generated by your chromosomes should be the foundation of your sense of dignity and respect and self-worth, which is like obviously an extremely bad message to be sending to kids. And now that's getting pumped into them in every single possible channel of media. That's why we live out in the woods.
Yeah.
That's why we live out in the woods.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, for as much as a helicopter parent I was in some aspects, there was no, I remember my older daughter when she was about 12 or 13 wanting to try out the goth look, which I don't know what they call it now, but back then they called it goth, with the black nails and the black lips and all that stuff. And I laughed at her. I said, no, you can wear a black shirt and that's it. You're not doing that. It's not. And then it was done. It was over with. She stomped away. She was mad. And, but yeah, parenting, balance, all of those things are, they do have a better chance of making a more well-rounded adult for sure. Last question for you, if you don't mind. What do you, besides, I want you to tell everybody again where they can find the documentary, where they can find more, all that stuff. But I was curious before, like what are you hoping people take away from the documentary?
Yeah, again, so people can just watch it. Good Kid Productions YouTube channel. So just Good Kid Productions, or you can find it just by typing in Broken Boys of Kenosha. They can also go to goodkidproductions.com where you can see all our social media feeds and a lot of the other docs that we've done for our channel and for some of our dearly beloved clients. Mm-hmm. And what I want them to take away. I mean, at the very least, I just want to generate more reflexive skepticism of standard issue corporate mainstream medias about viral news events. I mean, we saw this go down in Memphis just like a couple of days ago. Yeah. In terms of an event happens, the main corporate media storytellers are saturated in a kind of hyper left progressive politics, and they immediately try to jam it into that storyline in ways that were like so awkward that attempt kind of fell apart because it was difficult to do given that it was 5 police officers. But I think the skepticism, I'd like it to retain somewhat of a bipartisan flavor. Okay. Where I think you ought to be skeptical of MSNBC and CNN and Good Morning America. I do think those are broken and corrupted, deeply corrupted institutions that pump anti-truth into the American public. Absolutely. But there are ways in which like the Fox News counterbalancing also have their own set of dogmas.
It's true.
And both of them in combination will end up missing kind of these deeper stories that don't fit a neat political narrative.
Yeah. I love that. Rob, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. I cannot encourage people enough to go and watch this documentary and just, get your dose of truth. Well done, truth. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, family. If you're looking for the perfect gift for the reader in your life, why not check out one of my books? They're all available on Amazon and most major online book retailers, as well as elsakurt.com.